The After Show with TelecomTV's Guy Daniels and Ray Maistre.
Welcome to The After Show on Telecom TV. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content, and we are broadcasting live and waiting to hear from you at the end of day one of the TelecomTV Summit on the Cloud Native Telco. Today we held two roundtable discussions, one on removing the barriers to cloud native operations within telcos and the other on cloud native in a multi-cloud environment. And I'm delighted to say that we are joined on this live Q&A program by several of our panelists. So now is the time to submit your questions on these topics if you haven't already done so, and we'll look to answer as many as we can. Just use the online form right here on the website. As usual, co-hosting the After Show is Ray Maistre, who is Editorial Director at TelecomTV. Now, Ray, we also featured an interview today with Yves Belago, Director of Network Strategy at Orange, and he had some pretty clear and decisive views on cloud native.
Yes, Guy. Well, that was a great interview with Yves, and ultimately, of course, we can talk all day about how things might be or should be, but it's the network operators that ultimately have to take the very tough decisions about what to change and the pace of change and figure out how those changes benefit them. Yves had some great insights into the hybrid cloud outlook for Orange and how the deployment of a new 5G core is going to be a critical milestone for Orange's own cloud native strategy. So a really interesting conversation. And I think overall the nature of the discussions we've had on cloud native telco has matured significantly during 2021. I get the sense that operators and their technology partners have a clearer view of what needs to be achieved, when and how.
Yes, let's hope so, Ray, because there's still a massive job ahead of us all. Well, okay, we still have about an hour or two before the Apple press conference starts, which apparently is a slightly bigger box office attraction than the Cloud Native Telco, but only slightly. So let's find out who is joining us live on our must-see show today. Mattias Fridström, who is Chief Evangelist for Telia Carrier. Ildiko Vansha, Senior Manager Community and Ecosystem at the Open Infrastructure Foundation. Lee Hines, Technology Strategist, Communications Technology Group with Hewlett Packard Enterprise. And Igor Marti, who is Chief Technology Officer, SI and Telco for Lenovo. Well, hello everyone, really good to see you all again. Lots of audience questions to get through in the next 45 minutes or so. And I know I always say that, but we really have had some terrific feedback this year. Ray, over to you to start us off.
Yeah, thanks, Guy, and thanks to all our viewers for sending these questions in advance. So here's our first question today, and Mattias, we're going to give this one to you first. And the question is, how important is it to have a standard for telcos to help them to go cloud native? There's still no agreed upon standard, and vendor lock-ins are limiting the ability of CSPs to become cloud native organizations. Under these circumstances, what would be the best strategy for CSPs to pursue a cloud native strategy? So a big question about standards and how operators approach this. Mattias, so what would be your response to that question?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, really. And I think, standards for telecom operators are always good. But I think, the last couple of years, or at least the last 5 years, we've kind of got used to not working with standards at all, basically when building networks and running systems and applications. So I think in some way we're managing fine. Many of our systems are self-built. They are applications that we've done ourselves, twisted ourselves, and therefore standards are a bit hard to do. But I do think parts of our companies really would love to have standards, especially when it comes down to security and privacy. I think it would be perfect for our people if we could say, this is built according to standards, and thereby, by default, this is safe and secure, and you don't need to worry anything about those type of topics there. But I think we shouldn't worry too much about non-standards. We've got quite used to that. There's a lot of knowledge in the industry that can help come around the lack of standards. And I don't think we should really chase standards just for chasing standards. So I think, operators should just bring in quality knowledge and thereby make the decisions themselves.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Mattias. Ildiko, I think you want to come in on this one as well.
Yes, I just wanted to echo what Mattias said, because I think trying to rely on standards are kind of making us and telcos a bit maybe overly comfortable on one hand. And on the other hand, when it comes to cloud native, I think the emphasis really is on the application space and the application design. So as Mattias said, there are considerations like security. And I just wanted to also highlight that I think, again, it's not really about underlying technologies. It is about design. So we need to talk about policies, we need to talk about best practices. And I don't think that we will be able to create a standard on how to design an application that fits on top of a cloud environment. We can come up with best practices, we can come up with ways how it is worthwhile to do that, how you can treat the infrastructure, how you can leverage what a cloud has to offer. But if we are trying to standardize the design steps and those methods, we are locking ourselves into boxes, and it will be really hard to move forward with technology evolution if we choose that route.
Okay, interesting. Thanks, Ildiko. Any other feedback or comments on this topic before we move on? If not, okay. Mattias, Ildiko, thanks very much. Guy, over to you for the next question.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. This next viewer question comes from a European operator. Igor, I might ask you this question first, but by all means, all our guests can respond if they so wish. The question is slightly long. I find it interesting that people automatically jump to public cloud when discussing barriers to cloud native and don't seem to include how private cloud can help. And of all the things listed, competence at all levels is surely the only real barrier. All of the barriers such as security, legal, regulatory can all be addressed by private cloud. So if I'm summarizing this viewer's question correctly, one, not enough focus on private cloud, and two, the biggest barrier to adoption is competence. Would you concur with this viewer here, or do you have different views?
Hey, thank you for the question, but I think up to now, the cloudification of the CNF or the VNF, let's say CNF, are more on the 5G core, on the core of the network, if you are speaking about really network. And these competencies, this solution could be more easily sold like an IT workload, and could be more easily put on cloud, depending on the legacy of the solution. So this for that, people are quite easily jumping on public cloud. But as soon as you will go to the edge, to the far edge, where you are speaking about base radio station, where you are speaking about how you access the network, and if you really want to cloudify all the edge, it will be even more and more difficult to speak about public cloud. It will be private cloud. So at the end of the day, it will be hybrid cloud or multi-cloud with hybrid cloud internally. But I think it was a question of matter of time, and we started, and the telco operator started where they will be easiest for them to start to virtualize and to cloudify their solution.
Thanks, Igor. Hybrid multi-cloud approach there. We covered that today as well. That's a lot of interest at the moment. Lee, I think you want to comment on this one as well.
Yeah, I think that the ultimate objective here is to achieve that acceleration of cloud native capabilities. And the skills gap, while it certainly existed 24 months ago and probably exists even now, I think it's significantly diminishing. Right, and what will drive that skills gap even further and further closer to a narrow type of environment, one in which cloud native development's not necessarily impeded, is going to take a use case, right, or a collection of use cases, a movement towards an aggregate of different types of environments where the cloud native solution will ultimately meet the objective of the targeted app, right, and so. That's what will begin to reduce a lot of the competency gap that's foreseen. And I totally agree with Igor that the private and the public cloud intersection points, including a hybrid type of environment, allows for those type of edge cases to be developed, and they don't ultimately impede the construction of the use case. So the competencies will take care of themselves as the market begins to mature.
Okay, thank you, Lee. So we'll see as the market matures, see how situation improves. Matthias, you'd like to address this double question, really. One half on private cloud and the other part of the question on competence.
Yeah, no, I think actually the private cloud question is really interesting. And I think, for us, we're right now in the middle of the situation, as you know, 3 months into becoming our standalone company, and we need to move out of a lot of private clouds that we are used to from our former owner. We had to be in their clouds. So when we had to set the new target architecture for where we go, the obvious choice for us was, go to the public cloud, because that's the easiest choice. You know where they are, you know how they work, and you worked with them before. I think, going back, maybe we should have selected some parts into a private cloud, but I think it's so much simpler to select the public clouds because and you're aware of them. And therefore, by default, we kind of selected, bring all our applications into the public cloud, and that's going to be perfect for our future environment. We know where they are. They're all around the globe. We're a company global. So let's do that. I think the obvious or the choice of going private, it's hard to know where they are. Build yourself. No, that's not really what we want. We want someone else to do this. So I think, it's a good question. And I can really see why people have gone public and then ran into these security issues or competence issues. But I think, the choice of private cloud is a difficult one because you don't really know where they are and how they work.
Oh, that's interesting, Mattias. Thank you very much for that. I think that's an area we'll have to develop on this summit, certainly in time for next year. So it's an area that obviously our viewers are very interested in. Ildiko, you'd like to comment as well?
Yeah, I just, because of my open source background, I just couldn't help myself to chime in on this one, because when it comes to the battle between private and public cloud, I think there's always a little bit of back and forth. And we mentioned Edge already a couple of times. I think how organically the systems and environments are growing, and they need to be connected in order to be able to serve the users on the edge. It's not always a choice if I only do private cloud or public cloud. It is always some kind of a combination, and even a combination of multiple providers, I would imagine, as we are moving forward towards breaking out of the large data centers. So in that sense, when it comes to building competence, I would just like to point towards open source communities. OpenStack is obviously close to my heart when it comes to how cloud infrastructure works. There's a large community. We have a lot of people from the telecom space there as well. And the OpenStack community is collaborating with a lot of adjacent projects and communities like the Kubernetes one or Aniket, and a couple of other Linux Foundation networking projects as well. And those spaces are really good for anyone to go join, participate, and you can learn a lot about the technology evolution, the principles, best practices. So you don't have to deal with your private cloud yourself, even if you choose to only have things in private clouds, because there are these groups who are working together to trying to figure out what's the best infrastructure there is for telcos to run their workloads on. And personally, I always hope that there will be private clouds as well, because I'm not sure I want all of my things in a public cloud. I'm also not sure that regulations always allow you to have and run everything in a public cloud. So we will see where that future brings us.
Thanks, Ildiko. And Igor, we asked you to comment on this question first. So let's come back to you for a quick response.
Yeah, in fact, when we all said, the question is, it's a picture today, right now, on public and private cloud. And when we are speaking public cloud, we are speaking about the biggest provider of public cloud, and they are now in a big data center around the world in place. Now the question, maybe the other question remaining is, where the servers or the public cloud will arrive, meaning that we are seeing more and more rack tower company coming, and maybe they will provide public cloud at the edge. I don't know. So that's maybe the question where the hyperscaler will stop to invest and to develop their own public cloud.
Excellent comments. Thank you very much for that. Thanks, everybody. Ray, let's hand over to you for our next viewer question.
Okay, thanks, Guy. And this is the kind of question I feel that we're going to get more of as things mature for cloud native telcos. And Ildiko, I'm going to position this question to you to start. And the question is, are cloud native applications really infrastructure independent with no hard-coded dependencies? If so, how will this benefit telcos?
In an ideal world, so I think the short answer is most probably no. I don't think that you can have your application independent if we are really look at what the word independent means. I think we can look into the applications being agnostic. We can also look into the applications being adaptable, flexible, and just really focusing on how the infrastructure can be transparent at the same time, in the sense that there are applications that will rely on special hardware features like hardware accelerators. We will just need those. You can't solve everything in the software layer. That's another thing that we are bouncing back and forth, trying to solve everything in software and then trying to solve everything in hardware, and then trying to figure out which one is the faster, and we're just going back and forth between the two. But the fact is that we will not be able to get rid of hardware dependency altogether, but we can build the infrastructure in a way that it is transparent about the available resources, and we can also design and build the application layer and the workloads in a way that they can leverage the hardware that they have available and also be able to gracefully degrade in case they don't have something there that they would expect to be.
Okay, excellent. Excellent answer there, Ildiko. Thank you. Yes, Igor.
I think I completely agree, and we see really the evolution of the both sides, from software perspective, from hardware perspective. We are seeing the giant from microprocessor buying some networking company or some accelerators company, and they are trying to create new type of devices, meaning PC inside PC, Unix with processors, with memory, with acceleration, and to try to offload this request from the network function. And another way we are seeing from the software, the idea to just offload everything on the hardware with an abstraction layer. So I think as soon as this abstraction layer, like we mentioned, and this will be done, then we can think about really cloud native and independent, not dependency or remove the dependency of the hardware. But I think it's not for today yet.
Okay, great. Thanks, Igor. Okay, if nobody else wants to come in on this topic, I'll hand back over to Guy for the next question. Guy, back over to you.
Yep, thank you, Ray. And a reminder to our viewers, please keep the questions coming in. We've already had a few more since we started the programme. That's terrific. Lee, I'm going to position this next question to you. And the question is, the main problem to achieve cloud native for telecoms operators is that the main telco function developers are different from the main cloud providers. So how to bridge the gap? So I guess the viewers here is really bringing up this domain expertise as a potential barrier. Is this the case?
Well, not so different as it used to be, right? I think that the application development community, within telecommunication environments, I'm a telco application developer, and I suppose that there are significant nuances to telephony development, but I think those days are significantly diminished, particularly with the advent of the nature of the services-based architecture that you find within 5G core stack type of environments, the development of generic management frameworks such as ONAP. It allows for more of a seamless interworking functionality between telecom and non-telecom domains. So I think that similar to the skills gap, I think the differences in operating behavior and overall execution environment gap is also diminishing. But that said, it's still there, of course, right? I mean, we just talked a moment ago about how you are never going to really get away from some of the intrinsic hardware or operating environment type of executions that allow you to differentiate in the marketplace, and kind of even gravitates all the way back to the original question regarding standards, right? And so in order to kind of mitigate that gap and begin to accelerate the development towards what you want to ultimately achieve, which is faster movement towards cloud native type of environments, again, I kind of go back to the use case and letting the use cases lead the way. What we're seeing, at least from our company's perspective, is the use cases are oriented themselves around enterprise-related topologies, and that is typically a friendly environment for bringing in cloud-native techniques.
Great, thank you, Lee. So yeah, the situation's there, but it's improving a lot, way better than it has been a few years ago. Mattias, your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that I really agree with Lee there. And I think, a couple of years ago, I was really worried about this, that, we bought the clouds from some guys and we bought the systems from some other guys, and now suddenly everything needs to be mixed and matched. But I think that today is much better than before, and systems are more built for the cloud. And I think the competence on our side, on the service provider side, have increased as well. So I think, we've overcome some of these things where we felt, people are coming from different worlds and suddenly we need to merge those two worlds with each other. That's not the worry we have anymore. We think we have the competence in-house to merge these worlds and actually benefit from the cloud and benefit from using systems from our vendors that run telecom equipment for us. So I think, a couple of years ago, yeah, it was a big worry we had, but now I think, I think most of us have overcome that problem.
Real signs of progress. That's very, very encouraging. Okay, thank you both of you for those responses. Ray, do we have another viewer question?
We certainly do. We've got lots of them today, Guy. So Igor, I'm going to give this one to you, and this is another one around the topic of vendor lock-in. And the question is, the telco app development for cloud native will again follow a community approach to leverage community-based development. Until that is, each of the participants feels that enough is enough and then moves over to siloed competitive development to create differentiation. Are we in danger of this happening? And in fact, the person sending in this question provides an example of Open RAN where this is this person already believes this is starting to happen. Is this a danger in cloud native application development, that it starts off with a very community sense and everybody working together for the common good, and then it devolves back into differentiation and siloed development?
Okay, so maybe I will start with saying you need to look at where we come from, right? We come from black boxes, from giant of, I would say, system integrator providing network function for the telco, to something on cloudification, on x86 server or different specific hardware to success on the cloudification. And the telco took the opportunity to create not standard, like we say at the beginning, but to create like a shared view and common view with open source, and to move from really black boxes to something open and something interoperable and something be able to address by different actors. From a server's perspective, from network perspective, from a software perspective, from orchestration perspective. Now, that said, what can we understand by silo? If in silo you think that we speak about distribution, meaning that, okay, now you have like an ORAN or open RAN perspective, and it's already the standard, or not to say, the community defines some API, some solution, and then some vendors do some distribution, providing support, warranty, like it was done in the past on Linux or OpenStack. And this is a silo. Yes, maybe we'll see this opportunity. If a silo, it's the idea to say all is in API, and I can have this network function of firewalling could be done by X, Y, or Z, and they are different approach, but they are standard and open with API, and you can integrate the three together, not together, whatever. Then it's a good silo. So, but my point of the silo, it's yes, for sure. One moment, the people investing in the open community will try to recover and to influence already the community, depending on what they are capable to do. And the silo can arrive, but I don't trust the silo, because now I find the open community more and more, let's say, strong, stable, and well managed by themselves. So I'm more in the idea of distribution than real silo and competition each other. It's my view.
Okay. Yes, and I think we're hearing that actually from quite a few different sources in the industry, that pre-integrated doesn't necessarily mean closed. It can mean as long as the interfaces are open. Nobody wants to put everything together like from Lego blocks. Yes, Lee, let's come to you.
And that's exactly right. That's exactly where I was going with the argument, right? Sure, there might be some silos, right? Absolutely, but you're going to control the blast zone of exactly where that silo is located in the stack that makes up your ultimate solution. It's going to be built with very standardized building blocks all the way up to and to the point of, hopefully, where you have that class of differentiation that, as a vendor, as a telco operator, gives you something nuanced in the marketplace. But what you've done is you've kind of controlled the zone of exactly what is siloed about it. All of the infrastructure elements that are formed as standards, as layers, as abstraction points, those become common, and that is kind of the benefit that you get from the cloud native approach.
Okay, excellent. I like this term, the good silo. I feel that that's something that could catch on and be a topic in itself, I think, in one of our other summits. Okay, excellent. Okay, if we have no more thoughts on that particular question. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon, Mattias.
Yeah, no, and I think we shouldn't be too worried about this. I think it's a good reflection. And in some ways, I feel sometimes we're involved in developments together with others, and sometimes we feel we're at the point right now where we have what we need, but now we need to tailor-made it after ourselves. We can't be more standardized here, because then then it doesn't fit us perfect, and we won't gain the benefits we really want. So I don't think we should be worried about siloing things in the end of projects. As long as we work together and create, the standards and the foundations of everything, then in the end, some people are more in a hurry to do it. Some people are more, it needs to be perfect. So we shouldn't be too worried about it. But it's, of course, a thing out there, Sometimes we feel this project is going to go too slow. We have far too many people want too many things with this, and we can't just wait for everyone to get what they want. So, but don't be too worried about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's all about having a pragmatic approach. And Ildiko.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that if we, for instance, look into the edge computing space in the open source ecosystem, then you will find a lot of groups, and many of them are kind of almost working in silos. So just because some code or activity is in an open space, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean by default that there is diversity or a lot of collaboration going on already. It is a new space. Everyone has to figure out what they need, what they want, and how they will get there. And you can't necessarily do all the initial step zeros with a large, very diverse group. I think think what we need to focus on is interfaces and not do changes, for instance, in the infrastructure layer that would deviate from the de facto standard interfaces that we already have, and just really trying to focus on how you integrate the different building blocks. And I think that kind of is probably what we see in that space is in line with this good silo concept that we just came up with.
Yes, absolutely. Igor's copyrighted that one. That's all his. We'll borrow it, though, I think. Okay, excellent. Thanks very much. Guy, back over to you. I think we're past the halfway mark already, aren't we?
We are. 30 minutes gone. Thanks, Ray. 30 minutes gone, halfway mark. That means it's time to check in on our audience poll for this year's Cloud Native Telco. We have one question and we have 5 multiple choice answers. And it's right here on the website. It's quick and easy to complete. And the question we are asking is, will all telcos adopt cloud native practices throughout their network and operations teams? And you can see the current real-time split of opinions right here. And wow, that's very positive reaction. 50% saying yes, all telcos will embrace cloud native. That is very positive. And I can tell you that we have received a record number of votes for this poll, which is fantastic and representative. Let us know what you think. Click on your answer selection if you haven't done so already. We're keeping the polls open all week. Okay, so back to the Q&A, and as we said, we're about 33 minutes into the program now, but we still have time to answer more of your questions. Ray, over to you. Do we have our next viewer question?
Yep, absolutely. So I'm going to come to one of the questions that's literally come in while we've been addressing the last couple of questions, and this is open to anybody here. So this question is, and I think we've had this before, it's always a good one to come back to though. Is there an alternative to Kubernetes as a platform for cloud native evolution for telcos? So is there an alternative to Kubernetes? Does anybody want to pick up on that question and get the ball rolling here? Okay, yeah, we'll come to you first, Lee, thanks, and then down to Iltico.
Yeah, sure. Certainly there are alternatives to the Kubernetes type of environments if you want to move into a cloud native direction. There's also different branches that you can take, even executing above a Kubernetes type of setting, where you can move into different variations of OpenShift. You can even go further and further up the stack into full end cloud native type of environments. I'm not sure if there's a good alternative, right? We've certainly seen that Kubernetes is offering a lot of what we want in forms of service mesh functionality, in terms of operational throughput functionality, and embracing a lot of what you find within 3GPP itself. Kind of depends on the use case that you're going after. Kind of depends upon the environment that you're targeting. But there are alternatives out there. It just depends on what good alternative you're wanting to focus on.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Lee. And Ildico.
I just wanted to turn it around a little, because I kind of feel like that we are associating Kubernetes and containers with cloud native. The two are not the same thing. Cloud native is a set of principles that tells you to design and build your application in a way that fits on top of a cloud environment. Kubernetes itself is a container orchestration system. Those two concepts fit together really nicely, but just because you put your application in a container and put it on top of Kubernetes and shoved it into a data center, it doesn't mean that you have a cloud native application layer, and that will just magically overnight turn your application into something that is cloud native, something that is able to leverage the cloud infrastructure underneath. I think Kubernetes is doing a great job in terms of supporting the multi-cloud type of scenarios, and it is an important component, but it is not something that will make your application cloud native. So in that sense, I'm not sure that the good way to look at it is to find alternatives to Kubernetes, but really trying to figure out what technology suits your use case the best. Like containers are not a solution to everything. Containers also have a lot of issues, especially in terms of isolation, security, trust. So those are all things that we need to solve. And then if you want to have choices in terms of how to orchestrate your containers, you can look into Kubernetes. You can even look into OpenStack and just run containers on bare metal orchestrated by OpenStack. And there are obviously a lot of, or a couple of choices in the telco nano space as well that can help you with orchestrating your system. So I think it really is more on the side of design and design choices and integration choices that we make.
Okay, excellent points there, Ildiko. Thank you. All right, if we've got no more comments on this one, Guy, have we got time for any more questions today?
Yeah, I think we can fit in a couple more, Ray. Hope so.
Okay,
we've
great.
got a question in here that picks up on the conversation about silos and good silos. Good silos, bad silos. So Lee, perhaps I can get another quick comment from you on this one, and any of our other guests. The question is, don't you think that siloed innovation with untimely updates to upstream communities is one of the biggest barriers for the flow of acceleration of cloud native?
Well, I suppose it could be, right? I suppose it could be. I wouldn't say that it's symptomatic of all of the problems that you might find with undertaking a cloud native endeavor. There's nothing wrong with a successful use case. There's nothing wrong with a successful use case that's implemented in fairly proprietary techniques. I mean, especially if it's taking off. You can always retrofit if you need to. You can cloud wash if you want to. I see no barrier from the inflection point of the innovation itself. But we're not to that point yet, right? And the 5G came along, and the advent of standalone core and the adoption of principles within 5G that carried itself towards cloud native techniques is what kind of floats all the boats at the same tide level. And from there is where you can start sparking, even greater levels of innovation, right? So we've talked about it quite a bit today. In the construction of that silo, you have many layers that are helping out, that are, common across all of the other silos, so that you can spend your time focusing on what you want, which is that end application, and not all of the plumbing and mechanical work that went into just making your application live.
Great, thank you for that, Lee. Focus on what you need, what's really important to us. Unless there's any other comments on that particular quick question, then why don't we head back to Ray to try and squeeze in another question today?
Yep. And this one just in the last couple of minutes. And let me just read out what our viewer has had to say. This viewer feels that most of the cloud native functions are deployed in lab environments only. What does, how can operators and the community ensure that any of these CNFs that run well in the lab would continue to work effectively in a production grade deployment? Does anybody want to start off on this one? Any takers for this? Yeah, sure. Lee. Yep.
Sure. We're going through those very types of mechanical scenarios right now. We, like many other vendors, have data sites available for integration work, for lab development work, for multi-vendor development work, and we work with operators around the world to be able to support it. And that's what everybody does, right? Of course, it's going to work in the lab first. That's what you hope for. You hope for it to work in the lab, and so you can take it through further evolutionary, stages of progression. I guess what's a little bit different now is we're into a CI/CD methodology these days, right? So a lot of moving pieces, right? With CI/CD just in and of itself, but compound that with cloud native techniques, a new type of telecommunication development techniques, right? So you've got a lot of moving levers and that you need to gain control of. And in doing so, great, you're able to move things through lab into production, be able to ruggedize them, get them ready for a quality production type of settings. That's the telco fundamentals that still carry itself forward, even though they're operating within cloud native principles.
Okay, excellent. And Igor, are we seeing any good examples already of CNFs that have moved from the lab and into production environments?
We are seeing some. We are seeing some example. I will say from proof of technology to proof of concept to maybe some user case on some specific area or specific end customer with the telco we are working with. And what I want to add on this is, yes, we start with lab or proof of technology. We start with lab. We work on this lab for interoperability. What we are seeing more, it's the telco customer seeing people like us or like an ecosystem and partnership is no more a relationship of vendors to customers. It's really a partnership relationship we have. A partnership we have with this CSP, and we're helping them with our value. The software vendor helping them with their value, and we are doing this POC, then moving to some maybe specific area or specific place, like we did for example, for train station, to have 5G around train station with new type of user case and solution on IoT and whatever. And then after they start to do the scalability. What I want to add also, it's the question is really the concept of starting from scratch, right? You have a new cloud native networking function, you install it, you test it, you do the scalability in your installation of the production. But what cloud native provide also, it's as soon as you start to deploy CNF and you have a new CNF, you can do the same without moving or changing or impacting the other CNF up and running already. So that's something it will be maybe at the beginning a little bit more difficult and stronger to do. But as soon as the ICD or whatever will be, the processes will be defined, all new CNF will be more easier to implement, to deploy, and to update.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Igor. And we'll come to Mattias, and then we'll close out with Ildiko.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, I probably represent the operators here in this group. And yeah, a couple of years ago, absolutely, things got stuck in the lab and so on. But I think it's really, as Igor says, we're working much more with everyone in the ecosystem as partners, and it's all in our interest to put them out there. And I would say right now, us moving from everything in one place to everything in another place, that goes actually pretty smooth. Yeah, some things are tested in the lab, some things goes really well in the lab, but I think, we're actually at a point right now where the ecosystem works and we get stuff into the cloud in a good way, much better than a couple of years ago.
Okay, very encouraging, Mattias, thank you. And Ildiko.
I just wanted to also point to a few open source groups and projects that could help in this area as well. One is the CNF working group in the CNCF ecosystem. They are looking into best practices in terms of application and CNF design. And on the infrastructure layer, the Anaket project, if the name sounds new to you, the project was created from the merger of the OPNFV and CNTT projects. And Anaket is focusing on trying to define how a cloud infrastructure should look like that is suitable to run telecom workloads on top of. What are the basic needs, the basic set of APIs that you need to be able to run telco workloads. And they aren't just looking into the interface layer of the infrastructure, but they are also trying to look into how you test those APIs and eventually also how you test some CNFs that would come on top of And with these efforts, I think the testing effort is pointing towards what I think Lee was mentioning earlier, the CI/CD part. Because the more operators and vendors are participating in these groups and putting together those test cases and test environments, the easier it will be for everyone to pick up and make sure that the integration work can happen easier. And from here, we could, I believe, have a whole session on things like CI/CD, DevOps, automation, the importance of automation, how you build infrastructure, how you onboard applications and workloads, but I will not go into that part just now.
Okay, thank you, Ildiko, but a very useful and practical end to that particular part of the discussion. So, Guy, the red light is flashing in the corner of my tiny studio. Does that mean that we're coming to the end of the show?
I'm afraid so, Ray. Yeah, we are past the 45-minute mark and we are out of time. It's the end of our after show for today. Thank you so much to all of our guests who joined us for this live program. We could have spoken a lot longer and in more detail and depth, but we really have to draw it to a close now. And thanks to our audience for sending in their questions. That is much, much appreciated. Now, we'll be back tomorrow with another live after show program and, of course, more coverage of the Cloud Native Telco.
Yeah, that's right. We have roundtable discussions that look at best practices for creating telco DevOps teams and how telcos can use Kubernetes as an edge computing platform.
And remember to send in your questions for the after show as soon as you can. Don't leave it too late. So join us again tomorrow. Goodbye for now.
The after show was recorded in front of a live online audience.